Hello, this is Alaina Chan and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be drawing in my sketchbook and using every teal art supply that I could find. This drawing was definitely a challenge, mostly because out of all the art supplies, I only ended up with about 16 things that I could use, and that made me a little bit nervous because previously I've been able to use well over 20 or 30 art supplies to create a piece. And I was a little bit nervous that I wouldn't be able to figure out how to use all of the art supplies correctly, or at least in a way that made sense so that the colors didn't blend together or look the same. Right now I am sketching, and I was trying out some fake nails for the first time, and it was a little bit hard to figure out how to use the long nails and also hold the pencil so that I felt like I was getting a good grip. It ended up being fun and I figured it out, but it was just really funny because at the beginning you can tell that I'm kind of hesitating to try and figure out how to use my fingers around the pencil. Today I'm drawing my mermaid or Triton monk. Her name is Fen. I originally created her a long time ago for the first time I participated in Mermaid. I created myself a little chart and I had a bunch of classes and different fish that I wanted to use to inspire my designs for the characters. Fen was based off of a spade tail beta, and the betas that I found were all kind of this beautiful teal color, and then I also wanted to add in some other colors like purple just to differentiate her design and make it not look so one tone, but that's obviously not what we're doing today. Fen was one of my favorites. And this pose is actually based off of the pose that I did for her originally. She was standing in that pose, but in this one I decided I wanted her to sit. But the upper half of her body with her eyes closed and her fingers touching her thumb is very much the same as her first pose. I'm also using her original outfit that I created for her. And in that drawing, she did have some purples in her design, but since we're just using all of our teal art supplies, there are no purples in this version of her outfit. I've drawn Fen pretty consistently over all of my Huevember attempts, and I really love drawing her and bringing her back every time. I'll flash a couple of the designs I've created for her over the years, but she's somebody that I always come back to and use for my teal when I can't think of anything else that I'm going to use for that area of color for Huevember. Now we're getting into the watercolors. I decided to use the watercolors as the background, again, mostly because I figured that I can use that like a big swatch, kind of fading between two of the teal colors that I have in there. On my last video, I was talking about how I was having a hard time getting the watercolor to go down smoothly, and one of the nice people out there reminded me that I should get the paper wet before I start putting down the watercolors so that I can try and smooth it out a little bit more. And I think that really did help. I feel like it looks a little bit better than when I've used my watercolor previously. I think I need to practice with my watercolors a little bit more to try and get the technique a little bit better, but I feel like it does look better than it did before. I then gave myself some time for the watercolor to dry, and then I came back to the piece again. I decided to start with my alcohol-based markers just to see if they would lay down on the dried watercolor okay, and I think it really worked out very well. I feel like the colors went on a little bit more smoothly than they did before, and I was just kind of putting colors down. I wasn't really thinking about what color would look good where, and I kind of regret doing that because I feel like in a certain sense I failed using all of my teal art supplies and making them look nice next to each other. You'll see once I get to her skin that I definitely made a mistake and made it too dark. And then I didn't have a line color that really made the line art on her pop. So her face kind of disappears into the piece. I think next time I should do some color blocking on my thumbnails just to see which color should go where so that I'm not making mistakes and making it so that you can't see the features of the drawing. Because a dark skin tone isn't really a problem. It's more that I didn't account for the line art not being dark enough to show off those features compared to the skin tone. I also did something a little bit silly where I did some of the smaller details first before I went in for the big chunks of color. I feel like because I do so much digital art, it doesn't really matter when I put down a color because I can always change where the layers are and I don't have to really fight having a certain color or a certain art supply show up compared to other ones because I can just do it willy-nilly. Whereas with traditional art, I'm trying to relearn how to do traditional art in a sense because I can't just put down colors wherever and expect them to show up next to each other. I need to really think more about where each color goes and what the values of each color are so that things aren't blending together. As you can see here, I'm trying to blend a couple of colors for her features because when I draw Tritons, I like to have a little bit of gradients going from their fins or their fingers into the rest of their skin tone just to give it more of a unique look. So right here, I'm definitely trying to go in and use the same colored pencil that I used for the sketch. So the pencil that I used for the sketch kind of had a more toned down look to it, so I used it for her jewelry. And then I had this other colored pencil that I was like, oh, this is kind of bright. We'll be able to see the line art, right? No, you won't. No, you won't. But that's okay. I think overall the piece is nice. I just think that if I had gone in with a darker color for the line art and maybe used one of the pens or the markers that I had with their bullet nib on the other side or their fine tip, that it would have been a better line art. But there are some places where this colored pencil looks good, like on her pants. I think that that's a good place for it. Since I had already put down the colored pencil, I was a little bit nervous to try and add in that darker line art, mostly because I thought that the colored pencil and the marker would fight with each other, and I didn't think that my alcohol-based markers would be able to go over the colored pencil. I also felt like her shirt was kind of blending in after I had done the skin, so I put my Posca marker over the top of it. And then I was smart this time and I made sure to use my crayons and pastels last because pastels and crayons are hard to go over with things that aren't like a Posca marker. And I only had one Posca that I was able to use. So I decided to use the crayons as shading. And I also used the pastel to define some more things later. Right now, I decided that the background was looking kind of boring. And I decided that I wanted to add some bubbles or dots to the background, and I just had a ton of fun doing this. I kind of wish that I had put down something on the paper to keep it flat while it was drying from the watercolor, because as you can see, one of the corners is kind of flipped up a little bit, and it's a little difficult to work with. But I still had a lot of fun, and even though I messed up on some of the dots, like you can see up in the corner, there's like a line. But I had a lot of fun adding all the colors and making them different sizes for the dots and whatnot, and just kind of making sure that I was sprinkling all of those colors in other places so that if they didn't really show up on Fen, then they were seen in the background instead. And then I thought I was done, but I had forgotten the pastel because I was keeping it in another container. I use this as another line art or differentiating shading technique. And that's it for Fen. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Next time, I will be doing all of my blue art supplies, so let me know down below if there's any blue characters you want me to do for the Blue 6 fan arts, or if there's anything else that you want to see from me. Thank you so much. Bye.